Snow was falling in slow, gentle flakes outside the tall glass windows of the Preston Tower. Inside, the air was still, cold, and heavy with tension. A little girl in a faded pink coat stood in the corner, clutching a worn-out teddy bear whose fur had turned gray with time. Her wide brown eyes were fixed on a man sitting behind a vast mahogany desk, the CEO, Daniel Preston, a name that made people tremble when they heard it. The little girl took a step forward, her small voice trembling as she whispered the words that froze everyone in the room, "Please don't fire Mommy." Her mother, standing beside her, went pale. The sound of that tiny plea pierced the silence like a bell ringing in a cathedral. Even Daniel, who had built an empire by silencing his heart, felt something stir deep within him. Outside, Christmas lights blinked faintly in the distance, but inside that office, the only light that mattered came from a child's desperate hope. If you believe that even the smallest act of kindness can create a ripple of love, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Because sometimes, stories like this one can remind us what truly matters. Rachel Moore was not supposed to be in that building. Not on that day, not after the sleepless nights, the unpaid bills, and the countless times she told her little girl, Lily, that things will get better soon. She had been working as a cleaner at Preston Enterprises for almost a year, moving silently through empty halls after everyone had gone home. Her shifts stretched late into the night, and her hands often ached from scrubbing marble floors that would never remember her touch. She never complained. She couldn't afford to. After her husband left 2 years ago, taking with him their savings and her sense of safety, she had only Lily to hold on to. They had moved into a small one-room apartment with peeling wallpaper and a heater that coughed more than it worked. Still, every night, Rachel would kiss her daughter's forehead and whisper, "We're okay. Mommy's here." Christmas was just 2 weeks away, but for Rachel, it was only a reminder of what she couldn't give. No tree, no presents, no family dinner. Just another day of working while trying to hide the exhaustion that painted her face. That morning, she arrived early, carrying a small lunchbox for Lily. Her babysitter had fallen sick, and Rachel couldn't afford to miss work, so she had no choice but to bring her daughter with her. She prayed no one would notice. Lily, ever the quiet child, promised to stay hidden in the staff room with her coloring book. But fate, as always, had other plans. At noon, a storm broke out, and power flickered across the city. Inside the building, the staff rushed to handle the crisis. Rachel was polishing the lobby floor when she saw her supervisor storming toward her, Mr. Clark, a man who found joy in reminding others of their place. His sharp voice cut through the air as he scolded her for having her child on company premises. "This isn't a daycare," he shouted, loud enough for others to hear. Rachel apologized over and over, explaining her situation, but his mind was made up. Within minutes, she was told she'd have to face the CEO himself, Daniel Preston, for a disciplinary review. Everyone knew what that meant. Daniel didn't tolerate rule breakers. Rachel's knees went weak. She wanted to cry but didn't. She couldn't. Instead, she took Lily's small hand and walked with her into the elevator, whispering prayers with every floor they passed. When the elevator doors opened, they were greeted by the sight of Daniel's office, a vast, intimidating space filled with silence and power. Daniel looked up from his desk, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Moore," he said slowly, "I was told you brought your child into the building during work hours." Rachel opened her mouth to explain, but before she could, Lily stepped forward. Her little boots squeaked against the marble floor. She looked up at the tall man behind the desk, and with tears shining in her eyes, she said softly, "Please don't fire Mommy, she works really hard. She's just tired, and I promised I'd be quiet." The room went still. Daniel's assistant froze, mid-note. Mr. Clark looked as if he'd swallowed his tongue. But Daniel, he leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly, not in anger, but in something closer to realization. For the first time in years, he saw something beyond profit margins and policies. He saw a child fighting for her mother. And in that fragile moment, Daniel remembered another Christmas, one long ago, when he had stood in a shabby kitchen with his own mother, who had worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. He remembered the sound of her laughter, the warmth of her hugs, and the pain of losing her too soon. Rachel tried to pull Lily back, apologizing, her voice trembling. But Daniel raised a hand gently. "It's all right," he said quietly. The meeting that was supposed to end in punishment ended with silence, and something unspoken shifting in Daniel's heart. That night, as Rachel walked home through the falling snow, her thoughts spun wildly. She hadn't been fired. Daniel had simply said, "We'll talk again tomorrow." It didn't feel like mercy, but it wasn't final judgment either. Still, the weight of uncertainty pressed on her chest. The next day, when she arrived at work, the atmosphere was different. People whispered, glancing at her curiously. Later that afternoon, she was called to Daniel's office again. Her stomach twisted as she entered. But this time, Daniel wasn't behind his desk. He was standing near the window, watching the snow fall. He turned toward her, his expression softer. "Ms. Moore," he began, "I did some thinking last night. I read through your employment file. You've been here for nearly a year, never missed a shift, never complained. Yet your salary hasn't been adjusted once. Why didn't you ever ask?" Rachel blinked, unsure how to answer. "Because I didn't want to lose the job," she said quietly. Daniel nodded slowly. "I understand. My mother used to say the same thing." Then, to her astonishment, he offered her a promotion, a position in the company's maintenance management team. A steady salary, regular hours, and benefits. Rachel's mouth fell open. She thought she'd misheard him. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she held them back, whispering, "Thank you, sir. I don't know what to say." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that looked like it hadn't been used in years. "Just do your job well. And take care of that little girl of yours." She reminded me of something I'd forgotten a long time ago. Days passed, and Christmas drew closer. The office began to glow with decorations, garlands, twinkling lights, and laughter in the air. Rachel worked harder than ever, but now, for the first time, she came home with hope instead of exhaustion. She and Lily made paper snowflakes and taped them to their small window. She even managed to buy a tiny tree from the corner store, the first they'd had in years. But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something inside him had changed. For years, he'd spent Christmas alone in his mansion, his success echoing in empty halls. This year, that felt wrong. The thought of Rachel and her daughter celebrating in their little apartment tugged at him. On Christmas Eve, Daniel made a decision. He loaded his car with wrapped boxes and drove across town. He had gotten the address from HR, under the pretense of a work-related delivery. When he reached the old building, he hesitated at the door. For the first time in a long while, the powerful CEO felt nervous. He knocked softly. The door opened to reveal Rachel, still in her work uniform, holding a wooden spoon. Her eyes widened. "Mr. Preston," she gasped. Behind her, Lily peeked from the kitchen, her eyes lighting up. "It's the man from Mommy's work," she whispered. Daniel smiled awkwardly, holding out a small box. "I thought, maybe I could drop off a few things. For Christmas," Rachel stammered, not knowing what to say. But Lily ran forward, taking his hand. "Come in, we made cookies." Inside, the air smelled of cinnamon and hope. The apartment was small and old, but warm. Lily proudly showed him their tiny tree with its paper ornaments. Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years, belonging. He set down the gifts, and when he saw Rachel's eyes fill with tears, he understood that this visit meant more than he could have imagined. That evening, they sat together at the small table, sharing cookies and laughter. Daniel listened as Lily talked about her dream of becoming a teacher, so she can help kids who don't have much. He realized then that wealth had never been about money. It was about moments like this, real, imperfect, human. As the clock struck midnight, snow began to fall again outside the window. Lily looked up at Daniel and said, "You look happier now." He chuckled softly. "I think I am." Rachel smiled, whispering, "Thank you, for giving us more than just a chance. For believing in kindness." He shook his head. "No, thank you, for reminding me what Christmas is really about." That night, when Daniel returned to his mansion, it no longer felt empty. The next morning, he made another decision, one that would ripple far beyond that night. He created a new foundation under Preston Enterprises, dedicated to helping single parents in need. He named it the Lily Project. A few months later, Rachel stood in a new office, her office, as part of the foundation's administration team. Lily sat in the corner, coloring as always, but now her world was brighter. The ripple of love had begun.